off we go.
Good morning, everyone. Please fasten your seatbelts because we're going to kick off this presentation. Imagine you are a professional recruiter. You've made a huge career and now you've got to search the perfect applicant for operations manager. I've brought some pictures along of the applicants in question and let's hear your opinion first. Who would you choose? Who would you prefer to hire? Some suggestions, maybe?
Bottom left.
Yes?
Upper right.
Yeah.
Or bottom left.
Oh, good-looking females, yes. I would definitely hire that, and yes, we wouldn't hire black people. No, they can't work. But females, they can get pregnant, so maybe we shouldn't hire females too. So, yes, as you've probably guessed, discrimination still exists. And we will try to give you an insight on how these appearances, religions, different skin tones could influence your hireability. So now I will give the floor to Jeroen and he will take you further into the fascinating world of discrimination.
Yes, Del, thank you. I will be talking about discrimination on the basis of gender, so on the basis of appearances. Now we found an interesting study that pulled a lot of applicants together, applicants that were equally competent all, but as you can see on the vertical axis, the competence or the perceived competence level of the applicants is shown, and on the horizontal axis here, the attractiveness, so rating from attractive to unattractive. In blue, we have female applicants, and in green, male applicants. As you can clearly see, female applicants tend to get higher performance reviews or are perceived to be more competent when they are attractive, and they are perceived to be less competent when they are more plain looking, let's say. Very interesting. For men, this is absolutely not true. For me, it wouldn't matter if I were a hotshot or not. I would be hired nonetheless. So you can see it only declines marginally with unattractiveness. Now, is this true in all cases? Well, of course not. It all depends on which kind of job you want to apply for. If female applicants apply for a job in management, IT, or for the job of engineer, they tend to be overlooked if they're good looking. This is because in those professions, looks don't matter. It's your competence, and really only your competence. For male applicants, of course, still no difference whatsoever. Looks does not matter. And of course, in popular media, looks do matter, so you really have to look at who's applying for which job if you want to make some conclusions. So, in conclusion, being attractive could have major advantages, but you could also experience some disadvantages when you're applying for a job. Now I would like to give the floor to Alikan, who's going to tell you more about the next subject.
Thank you. Another group of applicants who frequently bump into discrimination are those suffering from obesity. The fact that obesity is becoming more common in our society would let you think that employers would become more tolerant regarding their attitude in hiring decisions. But what we are seeing is, unfortunately, is the opposite. Even though research has shown that obesity is mainly genetically determined, obese people are still often considered as less healthy and less productive than their more thinner counterparts. A company is always trying to look for ways to keep their costs down, and less healthy people could implicate higher medical costs. For example, in America, obesity costs employers about $93 billion a year, according to the National Center for Disease Control and Prevention. But is this concept of pursuing lower costs justifies this type of discrimination? Well, no, of course not. And fortunately, the tide is turning. Companies nowadays try to provide a healthy environment for the employers, and try to teach their employees a healthy lifestyle and a healthy behavior, and this way tackle obesity on the work floor. By installing wellness programs, companies also try to reduce the absenteeism in a company, and so these programs are in the best interest of both the employer and the employee. The employee is encouraged to lose weight and could perceive this as a signal that his boss cares about the well-being of the members of the company, whereas the employer could reap the fruits of the healthier employees in terms of productivity gain. A drawback on the other hand could be that the employee considers the forced enrollment in those health programs as meddlesome. If this is the case, it could mean it could have a negative effect on the relationship between employer and employee, and this could affect the productivity of the company. So as a manager, you could be treading on extremely thin ice when implementing a similar system in the work floor policy, without considering the opinion of your employees. So it's always better safe than sorry. Now I'm going to give the floor to Dale.
Indeed, Alijan, obesity, it's a nasty thing. Another group that often faces discrimination are black applicants. We've come a long way since the 50s and the 60s in the United States, but they still frequently face discrimination. An important contributing factor to this discrimination is the skin tone of the applicant in question. When a recruiter is faced with different applicants, he will choose for the applicant with the lightest skin tone, and he will dislike more the applicant with the darkest skin tone. I will give you an example. President Obama. During a study, a lot of students were given these pictures of Obama. So they saw lightened pictures and darkened pictures. The students who had seen the lightened pictures of Obama were more likely to vote for Obama a week later. And the students who had seen the darkened pictures were more likely to not vote for him a week later. Weird. This study was retested with a candidate for the education department, and it was confirmed. Shocking. So, the advice for all the African Americans and black applicants is that they have to unleash Photoshop on their picture and let their skin appear a few tones lighter so they can make more chance. Now I will give the floor to Peter Jan.
Yes, lastly we will look at a different, rather surprising factor on which basis discrimination often occurs. And that is the height of the applicant. Taller people own bigger money. That's more concretely, that's a recent survey showed us that men can earn up to $750. It was an American study, so that's about 500 euros extra per inch per year. Well, just to show you what a massive amount of money that is, we've done some calculus. Let's assume that Jeroen and I are both equally competent. Well, still, Jeroen will have a slight disadvantage on me because he's about 5 inches taller, shorter than me. This would mean that he would earn $3,750 less per year. And if we work both for 40 years, I will have accumulated $150,000 more than him extra in pay, just because I'm taller than him. Well, that's very good for me, of course, but that hardly seems fair. You might be wondering what explanation would be behind this. Well, psychologists say that this could be a heritage of the Stone Age, where tall people were seen as bigger leaders, as more to have more authority. But this explanation seems a bit far-fetched to me.
Yes, well, now on to these studies. Are they generally applicable? Do they only go for countries in which they were tested? Well, the reality is most studies were done in the United States, some were done in the United Kingdom. You may have noticed they'll said frequently African Americans. That's because those studies only exist in America. I know of no studies here in Belgium. So it's very difficult for us to say if these prejudices and biases exist in Belgium in the same measure as in the United States. Another big difference is the difference between public and private sector. In the public sector, the government really tries to reduce discrimination on the basis of all those factors, whereas in the private sector, no such general measures are implemented. And it's really one company for itself. So if you have a good corporate culture, chances are you will find less discrimination, whereas if a company has some less good corporate culture, you might find discrimination more frequently in that organization. Now, on to our conclusion, which the other will give.
To end, we would like to give you some advice. I think our presentation showed that you can be discriminated against almost everything. And so our advice would be, don't be afraid of discrimination because, well, it happens to almost everyone. But keep in mind, when you don't add a picture to your application letter, you can't do anything wrong because the recruiter can't form a prejudice against you then. So our advice would be better safe than sorry. And I would like to thank everyone for your attention. I hope you have learned to cope better with discrimination.